Sometimes you as an organization may be in the middle of a deployment. You might have already onboarded Azure Active Directory, synchronized identities from on-premises to Azure Active Directory as well, and now you heard of this buzzword called Zero Trust. Where do we go from here? How do we assess our identities? How do we assess our endpoints and applications to ensure that they are secure enough, to ensure that we are using the right set of tools, processes, and methodologies to protect our digital estate? Microsoft has something called as Zero Trust Assessment. With the help of this, you can determine where your organization is and how do we move to the next stage. I'm in this portal here and I'm going to share the URL of this particular portal in the resources section and also at the end of this particular video. So you will be able to get a first-hand experience of this assessment yourself. But essentially what this URL talks about is assessing your infrastructure against the Zero Trust model to understand where you are when it comes to identities, endpoints, applications, infrastructure, data, and a network. So you might have already guessed by now that this is a kind of assessment, some kind of an evaluation against each one of these pillars. Let's go ahead and work with identities, and then I would leave it to you as an exercise to follow along the other pillars like endpoints, applications, infrastructure, data, and network. All right. So when it comes to identities, you need to follow along this wizard like setup, and you need to address some of these questions. So let's say if you're in the middle of an implementation, you probably are consulting with Microsoft or maybe any other consulting party, and you may be also working with your internal departments to enable multi-factor authentication. So in that case, you may have to select some users here. It means that not all users are doing multi-factor authentication. Okay, so I've selected that and I hit next. The next question is which forms of passwordless authentication are enabled for users? Now, what I've seen is that the most prominent implementation of a passwordless authentication is Microsoft Authenticator. It's not just prominent, but also very simple to use because the users just have to install it on their phones. It's also common to use phone call as a passwordless authentication. Other organizations may want to use FIDO2 security keys, but then this will be an expensive method. So as an example, if the organization has about 10,000 devices, you may have to supply like 10,000 FIDO2 security keys, and it may be quite a lot of capital expenditure, right? So I will select just those two and I will hit next here and then take a look at the next question. Which of your user groups are provisioned with single sign-on, right? So mostly it will be IT workers, right? They will be part of the proof of concept, of course, and then there will be frontline workers as well, which will be the next ones to go. I would go for partners, vendors, and external people later on in my phase 2. Right? So initially I will go with all my internal users. All right, so moving on with the next question. So which of the following security policy engines are you using to make access decisions? Let me tell you, to make access-based decisions for your enterprise resources. And when they're talking about enterprise resources, they mean enterprise applications, the ones that are onboarded to Azure Active Directory, and possibly they are on premises as well. Okay, so I would use a security policy engine like conditional access. I may also want to use a CASB solution like Microsoft Cloud App Security Broker. Well, there are a lot of other CASB solutions out there in the market as well. But because we are focusing on Microsoft-based solutions here, we're going to talk about MCAS, but then it's always knowledgeable to know about other CASB solutions. So I'm going to quickly open another tab here and type in, let's say, CASB Gartner chart, or let's say CASB Gartner Magic Quadrant for 2022. And I'll click on images here, and this one here opens up the 2020 chart, unfortunately, but that's okay. So let's go ahead and see that. So if I zoom it up a little bit, it tells me that McAfee is right there in the top, the Netscope is right here, and overall the picture clarity is not good. This is kind of blurred, so I will open up another one here. All right, so this is much better. Okay, so McAfee is in the top, Netscope, and Microsoft is also there in the leaders quadrant, along with a lot of other CASB solutions. And keep in mind that this is a 2020 chart, but then it still tells us that there are so many vendors out there in the CASB space, okay? And every vendor is trying to improvise on their portals and provide a better CASB solution. All right, so I'll flip back to the zero trust maturity model here. Going through the assessment here, I will select CASB and the security policy engine, which I'm thinking it's conditional access, and then I will hit next here. The next question is about, have you disabled the legacy authentication? I will select yes here because I'm assuming that a lot of applications that are legacy in nature, for example, maybe using NTLM version 2, or even SMTP, might have migrated to the latest versions, or if they are using older versions of .NET 3.5 or .NET 2.5, have migrated to the latest version of .NET. So any kind of legacy authentication should not be allowed in today's modern environment. Instead, we should use modern authentication protocols like OAuth, OpenID, and also SAML as an authentication mechanism. So I will select yes and hit next here. The next question is if you're using any real-time user and sign-in risk detections when evaluating access requests. Well, how do we do that? Well, we do this with the help of identity protection. Well, this is something that you will get with the help of Azure Active Directory premium versions, and you need to have that in order to take the full advantage of the security features inside Azure Active Directory. I'll click yes to this, hit next, and take a look at the next question here. So which of the following technologies have you integrated with your identity and access management solution? Have you integrated MCAS? How about a SIM solution like Splunk, or also Microsoft Sentinel? Using an endpoint protection like McAfee or Microsoft Defender? How about using an MDM solution like Intune? And there are a lot of third-party products as well when it comes to implementation of MDM solutions. Then the security policy engine using conditional access. Okay, so I will select the MCAS solution, I will select the MDM, which is the Intune in Microsoft case, and also the conditional access policies. But more integrations that you have, the better it is, and you're creating multiple layers of defense or multiple layers of security when it comes to protecting your identities. Okay, I'll hit next. Take a look at the next question, which is which of the following context is used in your access policies? This question is specific to conditional access policies. So are you using any user-based restrictions, application-based restrictions? Are you restricting users by networks so certain users can access certain applications only if they are accessing from a certain network is what it means, right? So location based, network based, etc. So I will go ahead and select and uncheck and check some of these and click next. But keep in mind that this question is mostly related to your conditional access policies. We have not done any of these labs yet when it comes to conditional access policies. There's a whole new section coming up, and we're going to talk about that when we're going to deep dive into Azure Active Directory. I will hit next for now and take a look at the last question, which is, are you using an identity secure score for guidance? Now, identity secure score is something that you can see in Microsoft Defender for Identity. You can also see this score in Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So if you're using either of these, you may be getting a clear picture of where you stand when it comes to protecting your identities. So specifically questions like, are you using multi-factor authentication? Are you using global administrators? If yes, how many people do you have with the global administrator role assigned? Well, questions like these will be addressed and you will get one single snapshot of an overview of the security posture of identities with that secure score. Okay, so I'll click yes here and I will hit next, and that comes to the end of the assessment when it comes to zero trust of identities, right? And then what you have is possible recommendations. So there is implementing Microsoft authentication. So there is implementing multi-factor authentication. How do you do that? Blocking legacy authentication. How do you do that? Then there is protecting legacy against compromise, possible remediations, and also improving your identity secure posture. All right. So after going through the assessment, it gives you certain recommendations, certain suggestions, and also ways to implement that. Now, this is just one category, just one pillar that we looked at, and I suggest that you go ahead and take a look at other pillars as well. Okay, so that's gonna be your homework possibly. And as you see, it is very simple wizard based assessment, and it doesn't take much time if you know your environment. But if you're totally new to your environment, you just joined the company and you don't have further details, I suggest that you go ahead and send a Teams invite to your fellow team members, possibly identity architects as well, cloud engineers, and then educate them about this particular assessment and walk through this wizard along with them to get a collective feedback.